If anyone had told me that at 68 I'd be standing in the middle of all this, feeling more alive than ever and actually enjoying the hell out of it, I would have laughed in their face. I would have said they were crazy or that someone had spiked my evening tea. But here I am, Betty Sue, formerly the exemplary wife, mother, and grandmother, and for the first time in my life, I feel like I can truly breathe. Who would have thought that in your late 60s, life truly begins, and breaking the rules isn't the end of the world, but its most thrilling beginning? I had always been the embodiment of reliability, a rock, a fortress, that woman who always knew how everything should be: dinner precisely at 6, a spotless house, a smile on my face, even if my teeth were grinding from exhaustion. My husband, Harry, considered me his shadow. A reliable shadow, of course, one that always followed him, cleaned up after him, agreed with him. In 45 years of marriage, I had never deviated from that script, not once. I always thought it was my duty, my function, my life. And then came that Thursday, when everything changed. That day, I was sitting in my kitchen, as usual, polishing old silver cutlery. It was my ritual, rubbing, buffing to a shine, imagining how they would gleam on the holiday table. My husband, Harry, was in the next room watching his endless sports channels. He was mumbling something under his breath, commenting on the game, as if I were sitting right beside him, listening attentively. And I, of course, pretended to listen, nodding in the right places, while mentally going through my to-do list for tomorrow. Life was so predictable, so silvery, polished to a routine shine. I heard Harry mumble again. "What are you stuck on in there, Betty? Come here, look what this idiot is doing." He never waited for an answer. Never. Just spoke into the void, knowing that I, like a loyal dog, would come if called. And I always did. Always. But not this time. My hand, which had been continuously polishing a spoon, suddenly stopped. I looked at my reflection in the silver, wrinkled, tired, but a strange new spark flickered in my eyes. Idiot, I thought to myself. Idiot isn't the player on the screen, Harry. Idiot is me. 68 years old, and I still let someone call me by name and dictate what I should do. 45 years of servitude, and this is the result? Silver spoons, empty evenings, and mumbling from the living room? What a fool I was to believe that this was happiness. Instead of getting up and going into the living room as I had done thousands of times, I placed the spoon back in the box. Then slowly, almost ceremonially, I closed the clasp. The click of the clasp echoed in the sudden quiet of my kitchen, like a gunshot. It was so loud, so final. I stood up, looked around. My home, my fortress. But for whom? For me? Or for the image I had meticulously created all these years? Suddenly, I felt a slight tremor, not from fear, but from something else. Anticipation. For the first time in years, I didn't go where I was called. I did something else, small, insignificant. But for me, it was like an earthquake, a tiny yet so crucial shift in the tectonic plates of my soul. Maybe Harry won't even notice. Most likely not. He's too engrossed in his sports. And if he does notice, he'll just assume I've gone deaf or that I'm having another bout of senility. Well, let him think whatever he wants, because what I was about to do next was my business and mine alone. My small but utterly delightful secret. I quietly left the kitchen, but headed not for the living room, but for the back door. I put on an old coat that Harry always called Grandma's rag and stepped outside. The air was cool, fresh, smelling of rain. I took a deep breath. Finally, without his mumbling, without the smell of stale pastries, without the gleam of silver, just me, alone, outside, for the first time in a very, very long time. And right there, standing in the backyard in my old coat, I felt it, this strange, burning feeling of freedom. It was slightly frightening, but thrilling to the bone. This was the taste of that very betrayal I had been thinking so much about, a betrayal of my former self, and I God damn it, was starting to like it. This story has just begun, but trust me, it's about to get even more intense. Stay tuned to find out what happens when Betty faces even greater injustice and how her betrayal changes everything.
Well now, who'd have thought that simply stepping into the backyard without Harry's permission would feel so intoxicating? It was like downing half a bottle of whiskey in one gulp, though I've never touched anything stronger than rosé on holidays. I suppose this is the freedom they write about in women's novels, and I, the naive fool, always dismissed them as fiction. Turns out, all it takes is breaking a small yet decades-old rule, and I, damn it, was starting to like it. At 68 years old, I finally felt like a rebel. Funny, isn't it? I stood in the backyard, breathing in the cool air. Behind me was the house, full of familiar yet utterly stifling routine. Inside, Harry was probably still grumbling about sports, oblivious to the fact that his world had just been turned upside down, and I stood and gazed at a world that suddenly seemed incredibly vast and full of possibilities. Suddenly, I felt a wild, almost childish urge to do something completely out of character, something that went beyond the bounds of good wife Betty Sue. My gaze fell on the old shed in the back of the yard. It was crammed with hairy old junk, broken tools, dusty boxes of important spare parts that were never used, and other manly clutter. I always avoided it. Harry always said, "Don't touch my things, Betty. Everything's in its place." And I didn't touch them, not once in 45 years. But today something clicked. In its place, I scoffed to myself, in the same place they've been for the last 20 years, collecting dust and cobwebs, just like me, it seems, in my place in his life. Well, it's time for some serious spring cleaning, not just in the shed, but in my own head. I approached the shed. The wooden door creaked as I opened it, releasing the smell of dust, old wood, and something else, the scent of oblivion. Inside, it was dark and cramped. I flicked on the old light bulb, which barely illuminated the space. And there they were, Harry's treasures, a broken lawnmower, old fishing rods, a pile of rusty paint cans. He never threw anything away. Just in case, he'd say, always useful. It never was. In the corner, I spotted an old, dusty box. It was neatly nailed shut with planks and labeled in Harry's uneven handwriting, "Memories." Memories? My eyebrows shot up. In 45 years, I had never seen him open this box. He was always too busy with the present, which in his opinion revolves solely around himself. Memories, you say? I wonder what's in there. Maybe his old love letters? That would be too exciting for Harry. More likely it's water bills or grocery receipts. Or even more likely, a collection of old baseball cards he told me about in the 70s. I looked around. No one. Harry was likely still glued to the TV. My son David and Melissa probably didn't even know the shed existed, or they just didn't care. My grandchildren? They were too engrossed in their gadgets to notice that their grandmother had suddenly turned into a detective. And I felt that slight, delightful pang of guilt. Or rather, not guilt, but anticipation. I was about to break another rule, invade his private space, and it felt so sweet. I reached for the box. The layer of dust was so thick it left fingerprints. I sneezed, but it didn't stop me. I opened the lid. Inside lay old letters, yellowed photographs, some newspaper clippings. On top was a small ribbon-tied bundle of letters. My heart skipped a beat. They weren't from me. The handwriting was feminine, but not mine. And the name on the envelope? Dearest Harry? Oh, Harry. My faithful, predictable Harry. 45 years of marriage, and you never gave me a reason to doubt your fidelity. Or at least, that's what I thought. I probably just weren't looking for reasons. or didn't want to see them. What a naive fool I was, waiting for him to tell me everything himself. But now it didn't matter, because I held his secrets in my hands, and it felt like being dealt an unexpected card in a game whose rules I had just decided to rewrite. I pulled out the first letter. The date on it was 30 years ago, long before David was born, and it wasn't just a friendly letter. Every word was imbued with such tenderness, such passion, that I had never seen in Harry's eyes when he looked at me. My dearest, I miss your embrace so much. Our evenings were magical. My breath caught. 30 years, and he kept it all in this dusty shed. So I wasn't the only one living in my own prison. He was too. Only he at least had his little secret escapes. And me? And I, all this time, was polishing, cleaning, making meatloaf, and believing in his fidelity. That fidelity which, it turns out, was as rusty as those old tools in the shed. At that moment, I heard footsteps. Someone was walking in the yard. My heart leapt into my throat. I quickly stuffed the letters back into the bundle into the box, closed the lid, and tried to wipe the dust from my hands. If you're enjoying Betty Sue's journey and want to follow her incredible transformation, please subscribe to our channel right now and hit the like button to support us. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you won't miss any new captivating stories. This isn't just drama. This is the beginning of something incredible. We're on the verge of a climax, and you won't want to miss how Betty changes the game as she confronts Harry's past and a new reality. Stay tuned to see how the protagonist puts everyone in their place.
Well, isn't this just perfect? Just as I decide to play James Bond, digging up someone else's secrets, footsteps approach. Of course. Always. The moment you do anything even remotely exciting, someone's bound to show up. My life, it seems, has always followed a script written by the most boring playwright on earth. Or maybe I was just too good in my role. But now that I knew Harry was playing his own secret game, I felt a strange relief. So I'm not the only one who knows how to keep secrets. The footsteps grew closer. I froze, trying to determine who it was. My heart pounded in my chest like a trapped bird. I quickly glanced around. The box of letters was closed, but the dust on it had been disturbed by my fingers. If it were Harry, he'd definitely notice. He was always meticulous about such things, especially when it came to his treasures. But the footsteps were light, feminine. Melissa, perhaps? Or, even worse, Sarah. No, they rarely came to the backyard. The shed door creaked open, and in the doorway appeared Mildred, my neighbor. Oh God, Mildred, of all people. Mildred, who knew everything about everyone on our street and wasn't shy about sharing that information. She was a walking gossip newspaper, and seeing her here while I was engaged in something that could become her main headline for the week was simply the worst-case scenario. "Betty, dear!" she shrieked in her piercing voice, which seemed capable of waking the dead. "I saw you come out of the house. Thought you were taking a walk. But you're cleaning out this old shed? Harry always said it was his sanctum sanctorum." Her voice held such genuine curiosity that I felt a chill run down my spine. She was too close. Mildred, my personal paparazzi, always where she shouldn't be, always with the inappropriate questions. Of course she'll notice something's off. Her radar for other people's secrets was better than the CIA's. And if she sees that box, oh my God, this will be the end of my quiet life. Or perhaps the beginning of something new and far more dramatic. I tried to pull on the most innocent smile I could manage. "Mildred, what a surprise. Yes, just decided to clear out some junk. Harry always hoards everything." I waved a hand towards the old lawnmower, trying to distract her, but Mildred's eyes were fixed on the box in the corner. I saw her gaze linger there. "Oh, Betty, you know Harry. He never throws anything away. Remember how he kept those, well, Those old letters? She giggled, and my heart clenched. Letters? What letters? Did she know? My face must have been as white as chalk. Is this some kind of devilish plot? First, Harry hides his secrets, and then Mildred, as if by magic, appears at the most inopportune moment and starts hinting at them? Did I just walk into some ridiculous sitcom where everyone's laughing at me and I'm the only one who doesn't get it? I tried to look as indifferent as possible. Letters? What are you talking about, Mildred? Harry and letters? He doesn't even write letters. He prefers email. I tried to make a joke, but my voice was too high. Mildred stepped closer, her eyes gleaming like a cat that had caught a mouse. "Oh, Betty, Betty," she said, shaking her head. "You're so naive. Of course Harry doesn't write letters now, but back then, Harry was very popular with the ladies, especially with those whose husbands were away on business trips." She winked, and my breath hitched. With the ladies? Husbands on business trips? What kind of hellish game have I inadvertently stumbled into? And why, for God's sake, does Mildred know more about it than I do? This wasn't just Harry's betrayal. This was a betrayal of my entire life, which I had considered so proper and stable. At that moment, I felt something shift inside me. That strange freedom I had felt stepping outside suddenly turned into something sharper. This wasn't just breaking rules. This was discovering a new world, a world where my husband wasn't the man I thought I knew, and I myself wasn't the naive Betty I had always been. And this discovery, though painful, was liberating. "So, Mildred," I said, and my voice, to my own surprise, was firm and steady. "Tell me everything. I think it's time I learned about Harry's popularity." Mildred broadened her pleased smile. She was clearly in her element. As for me, I felt something slowly but surely boiling inside me, something that had been buried under 45 years of fidelity and propriety. We're on the verge of a climax. What's about to happen will turn everything upside down. You simply cannot miss the resolution of this story. What a twist! Mildred, my personal encyclopedia of neighborhood sins, suddenly became my guide into this new, shocking world. Who would have thought that the most boring person in my life would hold the key to the most captivating secret? It was like getting a lottery ticket that seems to be a winner, but you don't yet know how huge the prize is, and most importantly, how much pain it will bring. Or perhaps how much pleasure from the realization that you've finally seen the light. Mildred leaned against the shed doorframe, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Oh, Betty, dear, I always said you needed to be more attentive. Harry, well, he was always a sucker for female attention, especially when you two first got married and he went on those business trips of his." She lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper, though no one else was around. "There was a lady, Evelyn, from a neighboring town. She was very outgoing, let's say." Evelyn. Of course. There's always an Evelyn. And Harry, my Harry, who swore eternal love and fidelity to me, turns out to have been popular with the ladies. It was so funny, so absurd that I wanted to laugh or cry. I hadn't decided yet. "Evelyn," I repeated, trying to keep my voice from trembling. Mildred nodded eagerly, savoring my shock. Yes, she worked in the same office where Harry went, and, well, they spent a lot of time together. A lot of time. She even lived in an apartment near your old house." She giggled, covering her mouth with her hand. Many people said back then that Harry bought her something there, as a token of appreciation, so to speak. My brain refused to believe it. Harry, my Harry, buying gifts for other women while I waited for him at home, polishing silver cutlery and making that damn meatloaf. Suddenly, all those little details I used to dismiss as his tiredness or busyness clicked into a new, disgusting picture. His late returns, his detachment, his unwillingness to talk about work, all of it now made a new, bitter kind of sense. So, I wasn't just naive. I was blind, willfully blind, because it was more convenient that way. Because believing in a perfect marriage was easier than facing the ugly truth. And now that truth, like an old smelly garbage bin, had spilled right at my feet, and Mildred was enjoying the show with a satisfied smirk. "And what happened to Evelyn?" I asked. And it didn't sound like my voice. It was too cold, too detached. Mildred shrugged. "Oh, well, she moved away. To some relatives, I think, after Harry stopped going on those business trips, and you, Betty, started visiting him more often at work. I guess things just got too hot. Too hot," I repeated to myself. So I was a threat to his little secret world. My presence, my fidelity, that's what made his mistress disappear. I was his shield, his cover, his perfect wife who saw nothing and asked no questions. And suddenly I felt so disgusted with him, with myself. All these years I felt valuable because I was his wife, the mother of his son. And now I realized I was just a prop, a perfect prop for his perfect yet so deceitful life. Well, props can move too, and sometimes they can even fall on someone's head. I looked at the box of letters. Their contents now held a completely different meaning. They weren't just Harry's memories. They were proof of his betrayal and of my own naive delusion. Something inside me snapped completely. The last threads connecting me to my former image of good Betty to this old, obsolete life broke. "Mildred," I said, and smiled. My smile must have been ghastly because Mildred turned a little pale. "Thank you. You've opened my eyes. And now that I see everything clearly, it seems I have some completely new ideas on how to spend my remaining years." There was no threat in my words, but there was something that made Mildred quickly say goodbye and hurry towards her gate. She probably thought I'd gone crazy. Well, let her think what she wants. Perhaps I really had gone a little crazy. Crazy from normality, from propriety, from the perfect life that never really existed. And I, damn it, was feeling for the first time that I was the mistress of my own life. And this betrayal of all my former beliefs was the best thing that had ever happened to me. Betty has broken the old rules and only just begun her game. Her family has no idea how profoundly their obedient mother and wife has changed. What she does next will be an absolute shock and turn their world upside down. Don't miss how Betty reveals her true power. Mildred, of course, vanished faster than a hotcake at a bake sale. She got her dose of drama, and now, no doubt, she's racing to call everyone on the street to spill the sensational news. Letter chatter. Frankly, I didn't care anymore, because Harry, my Harry, turned out not to be the man I thought he was. And I, Betty Sue, who for 68 years had been proper and decent, suddenly realized that this decency had cost me an entire lifetime, and now I was going to get it back. It was time for my own drama, and I intended to play the leading role. I walked back into the house, and each step now felt firmer, more confident. I passed the living room where Harry was still grumbling at his television, oblivious that the world around him had just been turned upside down. I turned into the kitchen. There, on the table, sat the cooled meatloaf, a symbol of my many years of service, now so utterly hollow. I looked at it. On another day, I would have felt a pang of regret that my efforts had gone to waste. But not today. Today, I felt only irritation. Irritation that I had spent so many years preparing this dish for those who valued neither the meatloaf nor me. Meatloaf, a symbol. All these years I baked, cleaned, tidied, trying to create a perfect picture. And beneath that picture, passion simmered, secrets thrived. Harry with his Evelyn, me with my yet-to-be-named new self. I guess it's time to shatter that picture.
and start by no longer being the cook. I opened the refrigerator, pulled out yesterday's pizza. Cold. Perfect. No effort, no fuss, no homey comfort. Just food. I took a big bite, savoring the cold cheese and lukewarm crust. It wasn't delicious, but it was mine, without obligation, without expectation. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. I frowned. Who now? Had David and Melissa returned to discuss something again? I wasn't ready for another round of their hypocritical concern. I walked to the door, feeling a cold determination rising within me. Standing at the door was an elderly man, around 70, with kind, tired eyes and a small gray beard. He held a basket of fruit. I didn't recognize him. "Hello," he said with a slight accent. "My name is Robert. I'm your new neighbor. I just moved into Mildred's old house. She said you love homemade pies." He smiled shyly. "Oh, Mildred, of course. She's already pulled this off too. Of course, send me a new neighbor and with pies, no less. She probably decided I'd gone completely mad from her news and needed someone to fuss over me. Or maybe this is her new way of gathering information. A new espionage tactic?" My first instinct was to slam the door. I wasn't in the mood for new acquaintances, especially not one sent by Mildred. But then I looked into his eyes. There was none of Mildred's nosiness there, only genuine kindness and a slight bewilderment. And those fruits in the basket, he must have been just trying to be friendly. I sighed. "Hello, Robert. Yes, I'm Betty Sue. Please come in." I opened the door wider. He stepped inside, looking around. He said, "Mildred said you always treat all your neighbors. I just wanted to reciprocate." He held out the basket. "I'm, not as good a baker as you are, but these fruits, they're from my own tree in California." California? His own tree? Well now, a man who bakes pies himself and brings fruit, and my Harry can only grumble at the television. Interesting. Very interesting. "Oh," I said, taking the basket. The fruits looked fresh and fragrant. "Thank you very much, Robert. That's very kind." He smiled, and his smile was so sincere that I felt something inside me soften. We talked for about a half hour. He told me he was recently widowed, that his children had grown up and moved away, and he decided to move closer to the ocean, where he said there's more air. He spoke of life, of his travels, of books he'd read. He listened to me when I spoke, asked questions. He looked me in the eyes. Harry hadn't looked me in the eyes for 20 years, if not more. He was completely different. Not like Harry, not like David, not like any man I had ever known. He was attentive, kind, and there was no calculation in his eyes, only loneliness, just like mine. And oh my God, it was so unexpected, so refreshing, like a breath of fresh air after 45 years in a locked room. When Robert left, I felt strangely, not like after Mildred's visits, when I felt drained. No, I felt seen, understood. And this betrayal of my usual lonely routine, this conversation with a stranger who suddenly felt so familiar, was far more significant than all of Harry's secrets, because it opened a door to my own future. And that's when I understood. This was the betrayal I had been thinking about. Not betraying Harry with someone else, but betraying my former self, that Betty that let herself be humiliated, ignored, that Betty that lived through other people's lives. And this new Betty at 68 felt so good, so right. This was the beginning of something entirely new. And damn it, I was liking it. You think you know what happens next. Trust me, you're wrong. What Betty is planning now will turn not only her life, but also the lives of her family upside down. Don't miss the climax that will shock everyone.
And just like that, here I am, on the cusp of 69, and life, it seems, is only just beginning. How ironic that it took my husband being a liar and my son a calculating opportunist for me to realize this. And Mildred? Well, she was just the catalyst that set off this whole fireworks display. All my life I feared breaking the rules, and now it turns out that's where all the joy lies. And I, damn it, was loving it. The conversation with Robert left a strange aftertaste, a mix of slight melancholy and sparkling anticipation. I realized that the world didn't end with Harry and his betrayals,
nor would David and his schemes. The world was much bigger than my kitchen and my shed, and I was much more than just Betty Sue, Harry's wife. I returned to the kitchen where the cooled meatloaf still sat. I walked over to the phone, dialed David's number. My fingers didn't tremble. My heartbeat was steady. Now they'll find out that Betty Sue isn't as old and naive as they thought. They wanted my property? Well, they'll get it, but not on their terms, and not without my involvement. Because if I'm going to break the rules, I might as well go big, with fanfare and fireworks. David picked up after the third ring. His voice was irritated. "Mom, is something wrong? We agreed to talk later about the move." "Something is wrong, David," I said, and my voice was so calm that he probably sensed a trick. "What's wrong is that I've given it some thought, and I have a new proposition." A pause hung on the other end of the line. He clearly hadn't expected that. "A proposition? What proposition, Mom?" "The proposition is this," I continued, slowly savoring each word. "I agree to sell the house. My house, but not to you and not on your terms." There was a thud on the other end of the line, as if David had dropped something. Then Melissa's voice, shrill and indignant. "What? Betty, have you lost your mind?" "Quite possibly, Melissa," I replied, and my smile widened. "But for the first time in a long time, I feel absolutely alive. I've already contacted another agent. He said the house could be worth much more than you anticipated, and I intend to get its full market value." Shock. I can almost hear their jaws drop. They thought I was an old, silly hen they could pluck and send to the slaughter, but I turned out to be a hawk. Old, but still with sharp talent. "Mom, how can you? We're family. We wanted you nearby." David's voice was full of false hurt. "Family?" My voice grew colder. "Family doesn't kick you out of your own home without warning. Family doesn't plan your life behind your back. You wanted me nearby so I'd be convenient. And now I'll be nearby, but on my own terms." A surge of adrenaline coursed through me. It felt so good, so right. All these years I had suppressed every spark of protest, every disagreement. And now I was releasing them, and it felt like liberation. They wanted me to play by their rules. Now I was playing by mine, and it was far more exciting than any bridge game I had ever played. Yes, maybe I'd lose their love and respect, which as it turned out were just empty words, but I would gain something far more valuable. Myself. "What are you going to do, Mom?" David's voice was now flustered, a hint of panic in it. "That's none of your business anymore," I calmly replied. "I'll just say that I'm finally going to live life the way I want. Maybe I'll buy a small house by the ocean in California, or go on a round-the-world trip, or who knows, maybe I'll even find someone who truly appreciates my meatloaf." I chuckled. And finally, I said what I had wanted to for a long time. As for the annex, if you need more space so badly, you can always build one for yourselves or for someone else. For your mother, David, for example, because I, Betty Sue, am not moving into that annex. I hung up the phone, savoring the silence. The phone immediately rang again, but I ignored it. I looked at my house. It no longer felt like a prison. It was mine, my space for my new rules, my launching pad into a new life. I felt a wide, genuine smile spread across my face. Not the one I wore for Harry or David, but a real one. I was 68 when I first broke all the rules of a good wife, a kind mother, a convenient grandmother. I shattered them all, and my God, I loved it. This was my rebirth, and the best part was that I was doing it for myself. Finally, for myself.